Hey, it's Michelle from Weekend Craft here, and today we are going to try out the Ohuhu color markers. Now, these are water-based markers that are paper friendly. So I got the 120 pack here. Ohuhu actually reached out and asked if I wanted to try them, and I love using markers in my journals and in my art journal, so I thought, why not give them a go? So let's jump right into this. I am going to take a look at the marker. So first we are going to look at the brush tip. Now, this is very similar to some of my Tombow markers. And here is the fine liner. So brush tip I typically use for coloring large areas in. Fine liners I use for the details here. Now, this writes really smooth. It honestly feels like butter on the paper, and here I am just writing up my name, giving it a test. And then again with that fine liner. You can see it did not bleed through the back here. Also didn't take up any of the paper. So right now I am just going to color swatch. This is how I start any of my new marker or paint sets. And I do this that way I can kind of reference it when I am choosing my colors in any of my art pieces or when I am doing any coloring pages. It just gives a better representation than looking at the color that is on the cap. So if you have like 120 markers, this usually takes like 15-20 minutes to do, but it is worth the time. So look at those vibrant colors. Okay, so the most important test, I will say, with markers is just coloring. See how it's going to show up, see how the strokes are going to show up, and also just really seeing if it's going to lift the paper. Now, with these markers, these are the Ohuhu Pupe, P-U-P-E, paper friendly, and the biggest benefit behind these is that it's not going to peel up the paper. Now, I tried this on my coloring. I layered over a few times. The paper didn't peel up, and I didn't have any bleeds using it just as a regular marker. Now, these markers are non-toxic, and they are acid-free. Saw how they were with coloring, and now since they're water-based, I always like to do the test to see if they work as watercolor markers. Because in theory, they should, because they are water-based. So a water-based marker is still water-soluble, so it's not like using a Sharpie or a permanent marker. It usually will bleed when water gets on it, and water kind of reactivates the pigment. So 2 methods here. One, I'm just drawing out and then using water. And then the second method, I did like a little pool of water and then added the pen in. So now that we know that it is kind of water soluble and that we can use it as a watercolor marker, I'm just drawing out here a quick flower. Maybe not my best flower, but it is going to work for us to see how these markers are. So I go in and I fill kind of where you would see like your darker shading in the flower. And then I go in with my watercolor brush. This is a brush that is already filled with water. Squeeze it a bit and then the water comes out. You can really control the flow with it. And you can see that it is giving us a great watercolor effect. And then I'm going back in, adding some details, and then blending them. And I'm going to continue to do this petal by petal. I will say I like working one petal at a time, and then we'll go in and we'll add back some of that detail. So as you can see, this method did work for creating a watercolor image, but I will say I don't love this flower and I'm not super patient for waiting for it to dry. So I'm hitting it with my heat tool. And then if I paint something that I don't usually love, I'll go back in and add in some pen strokes. This is a great mixed media effect. And I am using a different marker here. Now, this is more of a permanent marker and not a water-based marker. So we're just going to go back in, trace all of our leaves. We're going to add some detail into the center here. And then we're going to go add some definition to those leaves. And I totally implore you guys, if you are just getting into watercolor, to painting, to mixed media, go back in and add some details to your paintings. It's just a fun way to kind of give them a more finished look. And if it is a painting that like maybe you didn't like at first, it can completely change the way you see it. Like this one here, I'm starting to absolutely love it. Final look, and we can watercolor with the Ohuhu water-based markers. Now, let's try a different watercolor method here. So we're going to add a little bit of water to our glass backing, and then we are just going to draw on, this is a glass mat, and then I'm bringing that water into it, and you're turning it into a watercolor. So you can see we'll just do a swatch here. And then what we'll do is try to do a little bit more details. Let's draw a heart. And this definitely works as watercolor. So how I would use this is I would kind of create a palette as I'm going, either on a watercolor palette or on, I really like using glass mats, especially for my mixed media work. And it looks just like watercolor. You can't really tell the difference. So let's try out kind of a different method with this. We're going to go back to our glass mat and we are going to scribble on it. I'm using a few different colored blues, hoping to get a gradient. And I'm just drawing directly on the mat. And then we're spritzing it with some water. Going back in just to add a little bit more pigment and color. And then we are going to try this on our watercolor paper. So we're really getting kind of like a scribble texture on this, kind of like if you were using pastels or crayons. So I added more water, scribbling in some more color. That more water on the left-hand side makes it look a little bit more like a watercolor effect. Okay, so I can tell here that my marker is like losing the pigment at the top. And that is from the water. So this is not my favorite method to do, where you spray the water down first and then add your marker into it. Luckily, these markers bounce back really well. But again, not my favorite way to do it. Okay, cleaning off the mat. Just always keep a baby wipe on hand. They clean up so easily. Okay, I'm grabbing my mixed media pad, You can see on the top of the tip of that marker there, it's more white, and that's because our pigment went into the water. So just pushing down on it slightly and scribbling, the pigment will get back into the tip of your marker. Then we're going to take our spray bottle, spritz it with water, and then we're going to let the pigment drip. It's kind of giving it a fun splatter effect. And just move the paper around. And that could be like a really cool background for a journal. So here are all the other ways that we tried this out. So I would definitely say these markers work as watercolor markers as well. Now for the price point, I think it's a pretty good deal. It's $54.99 for 120 of these. They didn't bleed and they didn't take up the paper. Now this is what I was showing you before. The tip of this marker, because we used it in water, is a little bit white. So we're just going to keep kind of scribbling with it and getting that pigment back into the brush tip. And look at that, it's back to regular.